Okay, so
All right,
I'm going to talk about kind of defending what it is to vote third party and what voting third party actually means in our current political system. So, contrary to popular belief, there aren't two parties in the United States. There are actually over 30 nationally recognized third parties, with the two biggest, of course, being us, the Green Party, and the Libertarian Party. So over 30 nationally recognized parties, but there are even more at a state and local level, which is not something that most people know. We do kind of understand as third-party voters that the local elections are kind of our bread and butter. That's really where we show our strengths, because we have the capacity to make a more meaningful impact, with and in our neighborhoods. Specifically, I want to talk today a little bit about presidential elections and what third parties do and what kind of role they play in these presidential elections. This website is 270towin.com, which is a really cool website, and sometimes when I'm feeling particularly down about being a third-party voter, I go to this website and I kind of remind myself of all the different ways. Go ahead and scroll down to the bottom and kind of we'll work our way up. Of all the different major parties that there have been in our history of the United States. So this is a cool website because what it does is it tells you the number of votes, so the number of popular votes that any candidate got in our complete history of presidential elections. So the number of popular votes. It also tells you who wins. It also tells you how many electoral votes those candidates got. So it's really neat because you start down here in the very beginning of the Republic with basically everyone running on the same exact ticket. Everybody was a Federalist when we first started. And then as you kind of move up, you're seeing all of these change. All of these colors represent different parties that presidential candidates were running under. If you'll kind of scroll up a little bit. But it's just really neat, like I said, because I like it because it tells you how many electoral votes an individual candidate got. 270 to win the presidency. 270 electoral votes is what you need. So I'd like to point out, while I've got it here, go ahead and bump to 1968, right? Such a crazy year for our country. This is actually the last time a third-party candidate, and you can see it here, I'll just point up here, if you'll go back up to the top. So you can see, well, you guys can't see because it's tiny writing, but George Wallace got approximately 1/7 of the popular vote, okay? 1 in 7 people voted for George Wallace in the American Independent Party. He received 46 electoral votes for those popular votes. And this is actually, in 1968, is the last time a third-party candidate gained electoral votes, despite the fact that they have done very well in the popular vote in other elections. Okay, if you'll go back to the other screen for me. So the thing about being a third-party voter, and the thing about the voting process in general, is that we view it as the primary way that we can be politically engaged. That's what society teaches us. That's what the two-party system teaches us, that if you don't vote, that voting is the end-all, be-all of how you can become politically engaged. And we, of course, know that that's not true. There is petitioning, there's boycotting, there's striking. Arguably, the most important and vital way that you vote and show political engagement is how you spend your money. Voting with your dollar. If you don't think Jeff Bezos should have $168 billion, then don't buy things on Amazon. Okay? But regardless, society tells us that you gotta vote, you gotta vote. Depending on where you're getting your statistics, approximately 47% to 56% of voting age Americans actually vote. And that depends on, it varies from local to state to national elections. It depends on the societal situation, the cultural situation. There was a huge turnout in the last presidential election. But what the two-party system does is creates this disenfranchisement of votes, and it's happened slowly over time to where only money has a voice in our political process. They've done this through very overt ways like Citizens United, which is just funneling copious amounts of unchecked dollars into our political system. And then it happens in other, less overt ways, to where if you're not paying attention, things like the Commission on Presidential Debates. The people in charge of scheduling and organizing the presidential debates are from the Republican and Democratic Party. They do not allow third parties to participate in those things. And so this idea that voting is the most important form of political engagement is supposed to be with the understanding that voting is the will of the people. It makes our will known. But we have systematically disenfranchised us in a way that makes it understood that like an vote counts the same as an enthusiastic yes, and that's just not true. And society and politics have created this fear culture around voting. I walked into a tent at the Plaza Art Fair and got everyone in the tent to admit to me that they vote out of fear. It's casual. It's casual fear that we just all live in. That it doesn't matter if they're going to listen to me, I'm going to vote for them anyway. And the politicians know this, and so they know that we're going to vote for them anyway, so they don't have to listen. But understanding that the lesser of two evils is still evil is something that we as third-party voters fully recognize and are fully aware of. So why vote third-party, right? When you vote for something, you're essentially endorsing that person or that ideology, and what you're saying is that is acceptable. That's okay. So we look back at the most recent election, Trump and Clinton, and so many people were like, well, I'm voting for Hillary because Trump can't be president. Well, I'm voting for Trump because Hillary can't be president. But what you're saying when you vote for someone like Trump is that how he behaves is okay. What he says is okay. When he does business the way he does business, that's okay. And I'm going to say it's okay with my vote. And so when we vote third party, what we're doing is endorsing an idea that we are allowed to fully support. We're not endorsing the other guy because that other guy is terrible. We're saying, no, I believe in this person. I think that what they stand for and what they're going to do for this country is right, is the right direction that the country needs to be going in. When we vote third party, we're forcing policy and we're incentivizing ideologies. It forces, when you vote third party, it forces the major parties to have to determine why they lost the votes. What could they have done? Do they need to be courting these people? And that's what it does. It ultimately forces the major parties to court our votes, to fight, to regain our trust, and to regain the lost votes. It forces them to adopt these new ideologies which follow popular opinion. I'm going to gesture to this, but what I'm really just going to talk about is in 2000, Nader, our guy, he got 2% of the vote. In 1992, Ross Perot got 20% of the popular vote. 20% of the popular vote a third-party candidate did. Okay, in 2016, Johnson, Stein, and whoever that third party was, they got 5% of the vote in this last election, and not a single person got electoral votes in any of those years. 1 in 5 people voted for Ross Perot, and he got 0 electoral votes. So that kind of brings me to this idea, because when we're going out there and we're talking with people, and this is kind of the culmination of what I really want to focus on today, when we're going out and we're talking with people, we get these like very classic same responses to voting third party, and it's because they want to scapegoat us, right? Because everybody's unhappy with the political process. I don't know anybody that's happy with what's going on in our nation right now, whether you're red or blue or green or yellow or whatever. No one's happy. So we get scapegoated often, right? And the things that people say, I came up with like 3 big things that I think people talk about the most. When you vote third party, what you're doing is throwing away your vote, right? It's a throwaway vote. Now this idea that my vote doesn't matter just because my candidate doesn't win is a lie. Because, again, you're forcing ideas through. You're forcing a political conversation to happen. 10 years ago, we weren't talking about race and sex and gender and sexuality in the way that it is being, in the way that it is being conversed about now on a national scale. We had an entire democratic debate about LGBTQ rights. That would never have happened 10 years ago. So you're not throwing away your vote because you're still having the conversations and you're making those two major candidates pay attention to what those conversations are about. Another form of scapegoating that they say is that we're taking the vote from another candidate. I love this one, right? It's this idea that that a candidate should automatically have my vote, right? It's that the default is that they get my vote, right? We all know that the deck is stacked against us, but votes are not given. Someone can't take your vote. You have to earn my vote. That's the whole process. You need to be worthy of my vote because it's my vote. It's the one I've got. Right? Yeah. And then the last one that I have kind of come across a lot more recently is that by voting third party, I'm exercising my privilege in some capacity. Because if the quote-unquote bad guy wins, he's going to come for me. He's going to come for my kids, he's going to come for my sister, and he's going to ruin everything that is good about this nation, right? And that it's my privilege that he's not going to come, for me, personally. So I'm allowed to vote third party because it, in some capacity, doesn't affect me, no matter who wins, right? And I love having this conversation with people because when people say that to me, it just opens the door wide for a conversation about privilege and what privilege looks like, and how I, as a third-party member, really have this great platform to leverage that privilege and to uplift the voices that have been so disenfranchised and pushed aside. The voices of people of color, the voices of the LGBTQ community, women's voices, people of different religious backgrounds, of different cultural backgrounds. And we as a third party have a responsibility to uplift those voices and to leverage our own privilege and do that. And so, again, it all kind of comes back, all of these scapegoating techniques really comes back to this fear culture that we live in. And this desire for people, when they say these scapegoating things, that what they're really doing is trying to shame us for engaging. Because I don't know any third-party voter who's not politically engaged, right? We have to be. We have to go extra. We've got to go harder. And shaming us for doing that in the manner that suits us and who we are as individuals and where we feel like this country needs to be going, it's just absurd. All the votes have meaning, even if your candidate doesn't win. And when you vote for the Green Party, what you're doing, what meaning you're voting for is social justice, ecological wisdom, nonviolence, and most importantly, grassroots democracy. Yeah. So vote green.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.